Alright y'all, it's still archery season down in Texas. It's pretty windy out here. It's West Texas, it's always windy. But the wind was out of a bad direction this morning. So Daniel and I decided to miss the morning hunt. So coming back out here now where it's turned around, it's still not great, but it's kind of that 90-degree wind that I really like, that's been successful for me. So this is a spot we call Old Faithful that, man, it's been here for a very, very long time. And we moved it this spring, or this summer. And I have not hunted it since it moved. So I'm excited to see what comes in, try this spot out. So I've got all my tags, except that one doe from earlier. So if a doe comes in, I'll take a shot. If a buck comes in, if it's a good buck, I'll take a shot. If it's young and little, I'll pass it. But just excited to see what happens.
I was hoping for deer, as my last hunt on that doe down further south where I didn't recover the deer was pretty disappointing. But about an hour after being in the stand, I saw a bunch of pigs coming in, back from the thick woods over to my right. Fortunately, the wind was about 90 degrees to them, so they could smell the corn, but they couldn't smell me. That was actually a perfect setup. They all look to be about the same size, but you can clearly tell that one is a little smarter than the rest, just by the way it hung back instead of rushing in like all the others. It was just a little bit more cautious, scoping it out. So I don't know if that was an older pig or just one that was a little bit smarter, but it came in a little bit more slowly. That feeder was right at 25 yards, so not a hard shot at all, and I didn't want to wait around too much and give him a chance to run off. So as soon as I had an opportunity that looked decent, I drew back. The second one from the right looked to be broadside, maybe quartering too slightly, so I put it right on the shoulder. That crack after the squealing was actually the arrow snapping. And this is where my indecision ruined the rest of my hunt. At first it looked like all the pigs were trotting off. Then it looked like maybe they were going to come back. They were going to give up on their fallen comrade and come back into the corn. I had immediately nocked an arrow hoping for a follow-up shot, but I didn't fling it because when they held up, it looked like they were going to come back into the corn and I was going to have another pretty easy 25-yard shot, especially this bigger one to the right. I was watching that pig as the rest were kind of milling about. Then it seemed like the group reached a consensus and started trotting off. As I had been sitting there waiting for a shot, the bigger pig was standing just out of range, the rest of the group ran off, and the wounded pig was standing there, again right at the edge of my range. It was acting hurt and I expected it to tip over at any second. But when the other pig started running off, it decided it was probably a good idea to get the hell out of there. So I drew back to give it a Hail Mary at 48 yards. It felt like a great shot, but again the arrow went low and left, and if you watched my first shot, that's what happened initially. It was this hunt that prompted me to retune my bow.
Sure enough, that big group of pigs came in. And they were a little cautious right here, and then they walked right into the feeder. And I couldn't really tell if one was any better than the other. So I just lined up and took a shot at one that looked like it was broadside. I think the hit was a little low. It still looked like a good hit, but he ran off a little bit, and then he stood way out there. And I didn't have time to range him, so I guessed at 40 yards. I think he was a little beyond that because my arrow went right under him. My second arrow went right under him. But I could tell I got a decent hit on him the first time, so I'm gonna sit tight, then hopefully I can go find him this time. This is the first arrow that actually went through him and snapped off inside him. I heard it snap out here, but based on that blood, that looks pretty good. I think we got a dead pig.
From the arrow, I quickly found a blood trail that actually looked pretty decent. This larger spot is where he was standing in the previous clip. I recovered my second arrow that was a clean miss and then began following the blood trail. I just found tiny little drips for over 400 yards up a hill, and I never found the hog. Well, so this hunt was an interesting one because the shot felt so good right when I took it. It seemed like a fairly easy shot, looked like a great hit. I was going to put it right on the shoulder because the pig was slightly quartering too. And then in hindsight, the hit again went low and left. And that's exactly what had happened just a couple days before when I was down south and I shot that doe by my other feeder. And after that, and then after the pig ran out to 48 yards, which normally that distance, yeah, it's not the ideal distance for hunting, but I practiced that distance. It's not a hard shot for me. The arrow again went low left. And that's what prompted me to check out my bow. And I realized all my field points were hitting dead on, but my broadheads were always going low left. And it had actually been a bit of a tuning issue from when I was carrying my bow around up in Idaho, just banging it around in the timber. I don't know if it was an issue with my cams or if my rest had actually moved, but I was able to tune my rest just slightly, and then my broadheads were flying right with my field points again. But it was unfortunate that it took that doe and this hog for me to realize that. That was my mistake. I feel bad about wounding the doe. I don't really feel bad about wounding the hog just because there are so many of these dang hogs and we need to kill as many as possible. But this pig, it probably died a day or two later, would be my guess. I don't know. Maybe it didn't. They're really tough animals, but just the way it was hurting, it was not wanting to move till the other ones ran off. And when all the other pigs ran off, that's kind of when it decided to follow. So I followed it through a creek after I found my other arrow, which was a clean miss, by the way. I found my other arrow, followed the hog through a creek. It actually went up a really steep hill over another plateau, and at that point, it was getting really late, getting dark, and I had followed just drip, 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 very slow, drippy blood trail for about 500 yards. And at that point, I realized it's going to be a while before I find this thing. So if it dies, awesome. I won't recover it. It's just another hog. Yeah, it's not the most ethical standpoint, but again, one of the main goals of hog hunting is just to thin these suckers out. So I was okay with it. So this is, again, another reminder to practice during season. Don't just practice in August and then set up your bow and then leave it be. Always go back after and before every hunt and just make sure that your bow's good. Test your broadheads so that you don't have a situation like this where you think you're right on, you line up, you have a great opportunity, a fairly easy shot, then something goes a little wonky. So this season was pretty stressful. It was pretty disappointing to have these two hunts in a row, that white-tailed doe and then this hog, both end up kind of the same way, with wounding an animal and not recovering it. But this was my last hunt before rifle season, and at that point, I was ready to start turning things around. So again, hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. I've got a lot of other stuff coming up. Until next time, stay safe, be free, and never stop seeking adventure.